You can certainly hear what the issue is. It definitely sounds like it is the drum brake shoes scraping on the inside of the drum. The handbrake is definitely off. So I have undone the bolts here on this flange, but the drive shaft is so short that I don't think I can compress it any further to get the flange off the bolts. So I'm going to have to take the other end of the drive shaft off, which is just 4 bolts. They're a bit of a pain in the butt to get to, but I'll pull those off. Then I'm going to inspect the brake drum, and then I'll decide whether I try and work out how to disengage and pull this transfer case off of the transmission, the main gearbox. Because, like I've said before, I'm keeping this transfer case, so I'd like to actually clean it up, make sure all the wiring going to one of the little connectors there, it's a troublesome spot according to the forum, so I'd be keen to get in there and make sure it's all clean. That engages forward drive. So, and there's a few other bits and pieces in there to pull apart. I recently changed the oil in it, so I know it's got nice, fresh, clean oil, so I can drain that and capture it and keep it, as long as it looks good still. And I reckon that might be a good project to do while Ange is away. So even though it's nice sunny weather outside, at least I might be able to actually get the transfer case outside to clean it. We'll see how we go. Feels like the handbrake is locked on there a bit. Not helpful. This was much easier to come off last time. I don't know if you guys remember. I can't remember if I showed it on camera when I pulled this off, but it was much easier. So something's definitely out. Okay, so screwdriver in the hammer has helped from the back. Time to pull it off. And we're off. Okay. Bit hard to tell, but I don't see any issue with the flange itself. Doesn't feel like there's any play. Maybe this all needs a clean up, eh? The shoes still look good. It might just need... Might even need new springs, I don't know. A lot of mud in here. Seal looks good, despite all the mud. Great, messing around with drum brakes again. My favourite. Goodie. Oh. Yeah, I don't know, guys. I think this whole thing needs a clean no matter what though, hey? Oh. Okay, we found our problem. What is that? something has snapped. What is that? Oh my goodness me. There's my noise. Must be important. Hopefully it's not important. Oh God, what is that? Does it come out of in there? Well, in a way that's good news, because now at least I know what was making that noise. I'd hate to not be able to find out what was the problem and put it all back together and have the noise come back straight away. So, okay, so something has snapped. And just for clarity, the truck wasn't driven with the handbrake on, not since we've owned it anyway. So it's not like it was something that has just failed from misuse. Oh, and while I'm under there, may as well show you this. I do have a leak. Relatively new. So it appears to be leaking from behind this gasket in here. Now you'll see this foam. So when this leak was really minor, I put foam here in order to fool the besikta that there wasn't an oil leak. And as stupid as it seems, it worked. Until now, obviously the oil is spilling out the side of it. Yeah, so what is it? Coming out of there. Oh, there's a leak there. There's a leak there. There is also a bolt here that is let go from the inside of the trans that goes that way, I think it is, or that way. It's fallen out and it's kind of sitting in here, so it very well could be the source of my leak. But I really don't want to pull these two apart and put them back together again, seeing as I want to be ditching this gearbox altogether. But the leak is definitely worse. It's actually leaving a little, some drops. I mean, it's not horrendous though. That's all grease, new grease, because I greased all the unis. Yeah, I greased all the unis. I didn't show that on camera, but one day I bought a grease gun and just a manual one, and pumped every little grease zerk with grease, and found one uni joint on a drive shaft, one of the ones I hadn't changed, that would only push grease out of one needle bearing, not all four. It was, yeah, so that's not a good sign, because that means it's on its way out. And I can't remember if it was this one. I really should have written it down, but it might have been this one here. If that's the case, I'll test again with some grease. Before I put this back in, I'll replace this uni joint so I can be done with it. Here's the new one. It's looking good. I still think it's this one of these clips that came out on that other one. It was the rear one that I replaced, by the way, not this one. I still think it was one of the clips here that came out, and the needle bearing shifted out of its assembly and jammed up, and that's what caused it. Oh, I also forgot to tell you, as a response to some of those questions as well, I did check the diff locks. So I jacked the car up, turned the wheels by hand, and one spins one way, the other spins the other way on the tyre on the other side, which is correct. Then I engaged diff locks, the air vacuum actuated diff locks from that diaphragm on top, and you could hear a big clunk, and then they would only spin one way at the exact same speed. So I know the diff locks aren't engaged. That's definitely not what caused any kind of bind up. I really don't think it was binding. I do think that the clip shot itself out. Okay, that is where that piece came from for sure. So what is it? Okay, little update. So it was not from here. Although there was a piece of it in there, this actually now just pulls out. So there's my handbrake cable. This is the head of the bolt. So this one is fine. This one here is not. So that could be an issue. Those are, I think, welded in. What I'm going to do is, I have got something that's a little bit like a product called JB Weld. that I brought over from Australia called Steal It. I think it's from Sally's. I'll double check. I think it's in one of these bags that we brought over from Oz. And that is, it dries incredibly hard, a little bit like JB Weld. Now, I brought it over in case I had a problem like this and I didn't know what something like that would be called in Sweden. What I might do is tap that head of the bolt laterally with a hammer and see if it wants to dislodge really easily, and then I can replace the bolt if necessary. If it doesn't want to move, I will leave it there and I'll put some of that goop in behind it and basically take the place of this. So I'll do that now and let you know what the result was. The good news is it wants to stay in its position, so there must still be enough of a weld or enough rust that is still keeping in its little spot. So I'll use some of that goop. I'll find it and show you what it is soon. I'll try and see if I can pull this transfer case out relatively easy enough, and then we can do everything here on the bench and clean it up at the same time. Now you are on top of my transfer case. So you might be able to see here, this is a cable coming in. There's 4 connectors, all of which have a yellow sleeve which should have a number on them, I hope. They're covered in grease, old grease and grime. I need to make sure I don't get these mixed up, or it's going to make it a lot trickier for me to work out where they were originally meant to go. I think it's a 4 connector plug. Now this, as far as I'm aware, correct me if I'm wrong, this has a number of ways that it can engage the transfer case. One of them is with 4-wheel drive braking. We've got really heavy brake should turn on 4-wheel drive to assist with braking. That's one feature it has. Another feature it has is when I engage low range on my shifter, this is the shifter here, that should immediately engage 4-wheel drive. That's my vacuum operated solenoid for 4-wheel drive. I have bypassed that at the moment so that whenever I turn the ignition on, 4-wheel drive turns off, because when the truck is off, when there is no ignition, it is in 4-wheel drive. So when you turn the key to the start position, that thing makes a clunk and 4-wheel drive turns off. There is the actuator here. One of these little drum actuators there. That is working, I know that is working. But there is an issue with my electrical connection somewhere along the line, because before I bypassed it, when I was turning the ignition on, I was not getting that clunk, which meant if I'd been driving with it, it would have been in permanent 4-wheel drive. So now the fact that I've bypassed the ground means that I don't have a way of selecting 4-wheel drive when I want to, which of course is an issue. So I need to be getting into these connectors anyway to clean them all up and see if that'll fix the fault. I would say it's a ground issue, but yeah, we'll see. Then there's another thing here, this long cable, that needs to be taken off. So we'll see how we go. So we've got that to take off, we've got the cabling to take off, we've got the other drive shaft to take off. Then we have this connection assembly here to remove. I might remove it from here, is probably the easiest, that little cotter pin there. I can punch that out, that'll stay on the gearbox. And then I've got the mounts on each of the side, so there are 2 mounts. And then I need to figure out where the bolts are to remove. So yeah, there must be some bolts in here, and then I can pull that whole transfer case off. And the gearbox should be held up absolutely fine with the engine mounts. I know there are mounts here, but that's mostly for the transfer case, so it should be okay if I remove this, I think. And then you will see the breathers, which are letting in a whole bunch of gunk, because they are gone and perished. So that's a perfect place to be getting dirt from things like this straight in here, which it 100% is, which is bad. So I actually might end up replacing this oil again anyway. So that's a shame. Just pry that off gently. Off. Okay. So which one did I just remove in terms of numbers? And then you guys can tell me with my filming afterwards where to put them back. Okay, so here's that one here. And that is number jawed. Okay, it's not a number. Oh god, I'm actually scratching it off. This is how I get around not stuffing stuff up too much. Cool. One down. Now let's take off this one here. I should be able to pull that cotter pin out with some needle nose pliers. Worst case I can replace it. And then this cable here, I've just followed it back. This actually goes to the speedometer in the dashboard. So this is actually for my speed sensing. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull this out of here without having to remove this and this. I'll investigate. I don't mind removing that plate, that should be relatively easy, but I don't want to have to pull this entire thing apart here. I would rather do that on the bench. But yeah, beggars may not be able to be choosers. I have marked on here with some Vivid and some paint pen where this nut finishes, and I've put a line all the way down the middle, because the idea is I want to try and match whatever the torque specs were on this when I put it back together. So I count 4 threads showing. Hopefully the mark on the nut will stay there and they'll kind of know where it goes back. So it pays to sometimes slow down and try these things without just tearing everything apart and then getting in a pickle. Okay, let's rock and roll. Oh, and I have chocked the wheels too, because this is still connected on that drive shaft, because I want there to be some resistance when I try and pull this nut off. So I haven't taken the drive shaft off yet. If I did, the whole thing would just spin. But that means it's still connected via gearing to the tyres. So I don't want to be moving this truck on top of me. That would be really good. So 1 1/8 of an inch. Let me try with my breaker bar first. Make sure it feels like it bites properly. It's just going to try and roll the truck on top of me. Full power. Yeah, that's all I needed to do, folks. This thing is so strong, it worries me sometimes. Okay. There we are. There's our broken bolt head. Damn. I won't film this, but you can see what I'm doing here. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bolts offset at a very weird angle and no bolt there. So I'll take these off now, and then once that's off, it's lunchtime. Okay, that's not what I actually wanted to happen. I don't know if you saw that, but that was all the oil started coming out. There's a light. This plate doesn't come off on its own. It comes off with a piece. So yeah, that's straight into the transfer case. So I need to actually drain the oil now. I was hoping I wouldn't have to, but I definitely do. Oh, okay, I better find some sort of receptacle that I can It's really thick oil, so it's not actually properly dripping out. Well, I got the bung out of the bottom of the transfer case, but what did I do? I went and used the rattle gun, and it came off way easier than I thought, because I'd set it to the maximum power setting, and it dumped a lot of oil on me, on the ground, and on the rattle gun. Good times. Wanted to show one really good thing about this Volvo. Every single drain plug is magnetized. So what that does is it brings any metal shavings in the diffs, in the transmission, in the transfer case, in the portal axles. Any metal shavings come to the bottom of the drain plug and they don't go around meshing with the gears. So that's one thing the Unimog I noticed doesn't have on the portals, is the drain plugs you pull out, they don't actually have a magnet. It's really clever to have a magnet. So props to you, Volvo, for thinking of that, because that it can, prevent catastrophic failure, and it can also just prevent general wear and tear over a long period of time. Anyway, it's also really nice to be able to check whether there's metal shavings, so whether there's something going wrong, you know, the wrong oil, not enough oil, failure, anything like that. And so far, every plug I've pulled apart just has like a fine sort of muddy mush to it, which is completely normal. No actual grittiness that you can feel within your fingers. Anyway, that plug is out, so I'm draining the oil now. It's lunchtime, past lunchtime, and then I've got some more exciting part of it. I'll pull the other drive shaft off, and then I can actually potentially get this transfer case off today, which I'm hoping. I work slow when it comes to technical mechanical stuff like this, because I just want to be very particular about what I'm doing, and not to break things, not to get anything where it shouldn't be, and not to forget where things go back to, not to drop things on myself. Like, I don't want to be dropping a transfer case on my head, I don't want to be dropping a truck on my head on a jack, you know. I take things slow until I work out what it is, and then I can go relatively quickly. But yeah, I just thought I'd document some of what's going on today, because I've actually thought about pulling this transfer case off for quite a while. I might even paint it up with some engine paint or something like that. But it's going to be really painful if I do clean it up to put it back to that really dirty gearbox. But, oh. Angie's such a darling. She's meal prepped for me for pretty much the whole week, my lunches. She's got most of my dinners sorted. She's got easy meals for me to cook for myself, like hamburgers and things like that. I had chicken sandwich last night, can have a chicken sandwich again tonight. I don't like spending ages cooking, so when I can just whip something up that's healthy and filling, I am stoked. She's also gotten me a ton of snacks. I'm not gonna go hungry while she's gone. Now I am gonna watch Cara and Nate, because I'll show you why. I like Cara and Nate, but I don't watch them that often. Look at that! They're in an old Unimog. I think it's the same year as Bowser, but it's the short wheelbase 1300 in Oman. So yeah, pretty stoked to watch them, and like they're just raving about how cool it is to drive a vintage truck, and how everyone looks at them like they just love it, and it puts smiles on people's faces, and that's what they like the most about it. And I think that is actually what I like the most about Bowser, is just it brightens everyone's day up. And the people who say it doesn't brighten, we don't want to know them anyway, so they can take their Teslas and shove it. All right, I'm gonna watch it. Yeah. Help. Well, I'm sure there was a better way to do this. That thing's weird. I need to clean that right up. And that's a seal. Seems to be doing its job. I've yet to decide whether I'll replace that seal. I might not need to. So now I've got access to that cable, of course. So I'll try and work out how to get that off. And then I just need to take that off and the bolts, and I should be able to drop this transfer case. It's just, I don't know how heavy it'll be, so I'll probably end up putting the jack underneath just to take some of the load, and we'll just see how heavy it is. Okay, we're making good progress, a little bit slow, but we're making good progress. Not very nice rolling around in the dirt under there and getting all itchy and scratchy. So this is the drum brake assembly. So this is what the shoes were on the outside here. Now underneath this part here, so that was where that speedo sensor went in. Now, this thing here is on the output shaft. So as the wheels turn, this on the shaft spins, which in turn turns this, and that turns the speedometer. So that's pretty cool. There were 3 shims here, a bit like that. So I need to make sure those go back in when I reinstall it. And on this side, this is a seal here, as you can see. I think I will replace that one. Even though it's not giving me any grief now, while it's out, I'll replace that seal. It's very easy to get to, and then I'll decide afterwards. Now, I also just drained the gearbox oil for the first time. This is the drain plug still in the socket. And there was that. Hence, it's pretty funny actually how I was just talking about how the magnet could save you catastrophic failure. Well, there we go. So that's a circlip. Who knows why that is inside the gearbox? Something's let go. Not what you want to be finding, but at least the magnet caught it, right? So yeah, far out. So I'm just waiting for that to drain. And then I'm at the stage, there are the shoes there. I'm at the stage here, just turn up the brightness, where I've undone 6 bolts, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 going into the transfer case. This will be what pops off from here, that way. And I've removed 1 engine mount. These were really hard to get to on my own on that side. So much easier on this side because it's hollow, the side it's not. So I can't actually really get to it with 2 spanners. So instead of taking it off from the rubber mount, so I just need to get a socket onto there and the spanner on the other side. And then it is free. So I'd say there's a shaft coming out of the gearbox going in. I would say that's what's happening there. Yeah, so it's all about how difficult this is going to be to pull off and how heavy it's going to be as well. Once I've finished draining it, I'll put the drain plug back in the gearbox. And then, I'm sure it's going to be messy. You know what, it is what it is. I mean, how heavy could that be, right? It's filled with gears, but it's just that section there. It's not like the full size of a gearbox. So I just need to be ready for weight and then see how we go. I didn't know everything was going to drop. I didn't know I needed to prop the engine up. Oh, damn. Could have that done damage? I hope not. They're on rubber mounts. I guess that makes sense. Maybe I should have thought of that. Jeez. Okay, hopefully that didn't do any damage. Couldn't have been good for that fan, could it? That's mechanical. What about? Yeah, it seems okay. Time will tell. It's difficult to take off. The whole weight of the motor and transmission was on it. Big day. Big day on the tools today. Big day on the tools. Yeah, she does the motor. It's heavier than I expected. Yeah. What am I doing? What am I doing? So this is called the FD51 transfer case. Even says here actually, it's got a part number, when it was fabricated, fabrication number rather, 3678 is the number on here. So this is front drive shaft, gearbox into here, it's spinning everything, just a bunch of gears. This is a plate that I can take off and we can have a look at the gears inside. That'll be really interesting. There's a plate on the back as well, and there's this piece here. As far as I can tell, the only piece that's seeping oil, so the gasket's not very good, is this one here. So I will take that off. But before I open everything up, I need to find a way to close this off, and so that I can clean this up as best I can, because it's so disgusting, isn't it? Like I might not be able to use water on this one. I might just use brake cleaner and just try and get as much off as I can with rags and a wire brush. And then we'll know what we're dealing with. It was painted green at some points, not really anymore. And for all intents and purposes, this works fine, but I have never actually driven around in four-wheel drive, so I don't know. No, I assume it's fine, and there's not really many seals leaking. There is an O-ring here that looks like it's been covered in muck for a really long time, so it could be wise of me to replace that O-ring if I can find it. I do have some part numbers and an exploded diagram. And I'd imagine if I had to pull that off again at some stage, it would be 3 times as fast because I would know what to be going for. All right, I'm gonna have a little breather because I'm a bit knackered. I'm still drinking coffee and it's like now 5:30. So this is just duct tape and Vaseline. Vaselina. And what I'm doing, I'm not making it waterproof. I'm just going to try and keep the dirt out as I clean this out of the bearings. There's no way to clean it on the truck properly. So that should do a pretty good job of at least keeping the crap out. Well, there's a much cleaner transfer case. Good morning, by the way. So I cleaned that up last night. It came up actually pretty good. I mean, it was absolutely disgusting. So I'm going to start pulling some of these covers off so we can inspect inside. I've now done an order with Tatanka, and I've got a bunch of seals coming, some new motor mounts, things like that. So I'll show you what it looks like now without the transfer case. And these are the mounts here. And they're all, I don't know if you can see those cracks, but they're stuffed. And that holds up kind of half of the engine weight. So I really want some good ones of those. So I'll be replacing those. So I need to pull these off now so I can paint. They are aluminium by the looks of things. And then here is where the transmission bolts into. And you can see how disgusting the gearbox is. So I've cleaned around a little bit because when I seal that back up with gasket sealant, I don't want any dirt and rubbish getting back in. So look at the amount of stuff I've picked off. It's seriously gross working with it, but there's just no point me cleaning up the whole gearbox. So I'll pull these motor mounts off and I'll do a bit of a sweep in here to get some of the dirt out. Those seals should arrive, it's Friday today, those seals should arrive on Monday, hopefully, because usually the delivery of the tank is really good. And I'm also painting up the drum brake, the hand drum brake assembly with a few bits and pieces there. I've got a new sealing ring and seal for this. So new sealing ring goes here, new seal goes on the underside of here, just to be sure. And then I think I'll paint this with a engine enamel. Haven't decided which colour, I'll just get something Biltmer wise. This doesn't get really hot, so I don't actually need engine paint as such, because that actually often requires a certain temperature before it will actually properly harden and set. These bolts have got such a strange smell to them. Weird yellow powdery substance. I wonder if it's some sort of Loctite. Wowzer. Wow. Cool. All looks fine. No chips in the teeth, nothing like that. So this must be the selector here, which would run in here and select low range and vice versa. So that is my low range selector. This thing would pop across. Very cool. Okay, I'll clean that whole gasket mating surface up. I'll clean up those bolt threads as well. I'll show you what I'll use for those bolt threads. I'll go overkill on those, because they do go down into through this gasket area, so they could leak oil. And then I'll use some gasket sealer and pop that back on, because I don't actually need to do anything in here. I just wanted to inspect for enjoyment and to make sure there were no chips, teeth or anything like that. So the next thing that I'll remove after that will be this and the back cover, where I think the PTO would normally go if there was one, but I want to probably change the seal in here on this. This goes to the front drive shaft. Okay, so I put some gasket cement on, and now this needs to go. Back like so. That was easy. So I'm going to use some of this on the bolt threads, even though I think this is massively overkill. This is more for like hydraulic pressure and stuff like that. From how I've used it before, I've found that it doesn't lock things on so tight to make it difficult to remove, but it will definitely stop any leaks or anything like that. So I'll use just a little bit on these. This is that fix-it compound I've put on the flange, and this is it here. It's called Need It. Now you can buy one that's just for steel, but this is the multi-purpose one I brought over from Oz, which still includes steel as well, so I think that'll be fine. I'll just keep an eye on it. So that's that all sorted. I have got the transfer case all done quite nicely now. Leaking a bit of oil. I've put a clear coat over the top of it to protect it, but this reminds me of the tanks that they restore on the Australian Armour Museum YouTube channel. If you haven't seen that before, and you should check it out. So it's the museum filled with tanks in Cairns, Australia, and they've got a really cool YouTube channel showing the restoration process. I just watched the one on the M1 Grand. That was cool, but this reminds me of this color, because they basically just paint everything. So I think I might keep it this color for now. So that was the primer, the rust primer, and then I also used that varnish I accidentally bought. We'll see. We'll see. Hopefully those seals from Tatanka arrive today. I've got a bunch of stuff arriving this week, which will be good. I've got a leak, an oil leak coming from the engine, and I wanted to investigate further because I wasn't sure what it was. So I pulled this like little aluminium cover off the back of the front of the bow housing, I guess you could say, of the gearbox. And this goes to the oil sump of the engine, but look, all the bolts are missing. So I'm missing three bolts that go up into the engine, the sump. And then the other one that was still intact, or still there, is just like finger loose. So I've lost them over the years, I guess. One of them was in this cover. So yeah, definitely will need to buy a few new bolts. Hopefully Tatanka will have them, I'm sure they will. And then Loctite them and properly set them up there, and then hopefully that'll be my oil leak fixed. Okay, the order from Tatanka's just arrived. It's like before 10 AM and it's arrived already, so it's so good. So I've got this seal to do, so there's a gasket here, and I'm just proactively removing that, just so that I don't have to deal with that in the future down the line, and it's pretty cheap, so worth doing it while it's out, right? Then I've got the two seals, the two sealing rings to do, and the new mounts for the transfer case. So I've got some work to do this morning, so I'll get that done, and then this afternoon I'm going out to that sort of ex-military kind of warehouse scrapyard place to pick up a few bits and pieces. So busy day today, which is good. And then Ange and Oaks are coming back tomorrow afternoon. Done those portal axles so many times as I am fast at doing seals now, so that's already one done, and handbrake part of it. Two wear rings are done. I've now got the main nut off here, so here's the flange, and now I need to come into the back and I need to knock this pin out with a hammer and punch, and that should enable me to get to the back of this seal to pop it out, because this seal's got a dent in it here, so it definitely looks like it's high time to change it. Welcome to a late Wednesday night in the workshop. So the transfer case is all in, looking schmick. Drum handbrake seems to work nice and smooth. Everything's feeling good actually, so I've put the drive shafts back on. As you can see, I've run new hoses from these breathers that were completely exposed before. So we've got one here, and a new one here as well. And that runs to the air solenoid here for four-wheel drive switch. Or sneak peek as well, doing some test fitting. Exciting stuff. And I'll show you actually. This switch here, pressing this it engages four-wheel drive. Light should light up here. That has not worked since we've owned the truck. I've never had that working. So I bypassed the solenoid, the air solenoid, so that whenever I would turn the ignition on, that would engage, therefore, disabling four-wheel drive, because when the truck is off, four-wheel drive is automatically on. So it's a little bit, I should say six-wheel drive is automatically on, not four-wheel drive. So it's my six-wheel drive button. So in the process of putting the transfer case back, I started just blowing fuses whenever I would turn the ignition on, and it took me so long to work out what it is. But in the process of troubleshooting it, I managed to find this really obscure ground cable going to the chassis, which was filthy. Cleaned that all up. That fixed the air solenoid, and I fixed some wires behind that forward drive switch, and I pulled that switch out and cleaned it with like a contact cleaner, and now that engages too. So when I turn the ignition on, you hear a clunk, which means 6-wheel drive is disengaged, and then when I press that button, then you hear another clunk to mean it's engaged. So that's working better than it ever has, which is really nice. And the short turned out to be just took so long to find it, was this heater knob here. A cable from behind it had unplugged itself and was touching. So every time I turn the ignition, it would blow a fuse. And the way the fuse block is set up, there's multiple connections going to each fuse. So it could have either been the high beam headlights, or it could have been the rear heater, or it could have been the transfer case. So yeah, I was super confused. Anyway, I fixed it. That wraps up this bonus video, guys. Thank you very much for watching. On the note about the bolt that broke, I actually found out that that's splined. It's not actually welded on, so it has a spline on the hub and a spline on the bolt itself. So it can't actually turn at all, and it can't really come forward. So the only way would be it could back out, but then I've put that fix-it compound on, so it should actually be really strong, which is great. If you missed last week's episode, we are fitting out the interior of the vehicle. I've made a ton of progress on that in the last sort of few days or week or so, and that'll be more coming next week as I pretty much finish off the interior of the cab. So stay tuned for that. Cheers.